Victory Studios in downtown Little Rock, this is Capitol View.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into Capitol View. I'm Mallory Brooks. Change is in the air in Little Rock as the city moves to close golf courses and trim the budget. We'll talk about the wide-reaching effects that could be had in the capital city. Plus later, retired General Wesley Clark joins me to talk about the increasing tension between the United States and Iran and the Trump administration's reaction. But we begin not with the upcoming 2020 election, but with the buzz surrounding 2022 here in Arkansas. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders is leaving D.C. for Arkansas and rumored to be eyeing the governor's office. Joining me from Washington to discuss this and more is Capitol View's Jesse Tenor. Jesse, welcome back to the show. And Sarah,
thanks for having me, Mallory.
It's always great to have you. Sarah Huckabee Sanders has been with President Trump since early 2016. Now she's coming back to Arkansas. Politico this week citing 3 people who have talked to her in recent days who says she's seriously considering running for governor in 2022. They also report that Sanders and her allies have started making calls to donors and Republican operatives in this state. She's not saying anything at this point, but even though we are now 3 years away, it looks and sounds like the train has already left the station.
Yeah, Mallory, I would even say that the train is already pretty far down the tracks. Just in talking to sources that are close to Sanders, they've told me that this is something that she is seriously considering. It's something that people have approached her about a while ago, so this wasn't just an out-of-nowhere Trump tweet. On top of those calls that have been going out, like you were saying, John Gilmore, he's a political strategist for the current governor, Asa Hutchinson, of course, and he actually tweeted out recently that there were even 2 websites already registered that would make it appear as if she would be running for governor or another political office. One was Sarah for Arkansas, I think, .com. And then a CBS story that was just released last night went a step further with a poll that was apparently conducted by some of Sarah's allies, and it said that the results found her crushing every other opponent in a GOP gubernatorial primary. Some people have already been speculating, saying, you know, we haven't seen this poll. Where did it come from? Who did it? Why is this already happening as far as the timeline goes, since campaigning really shouldn't start until next year? But again, that's just kind of shows how people can't stop talking about this, really. I mean, the 2020 elections aren't even past us yet. A lot of politicos there already had their 2022 brackets filled out, ready to go, and you could say that Sanders, at least contemplating a run for governor, would be a major upset, Mallory.
And assuming she does jump into this race, it would shake up what might have already been a very interesting GOP primary in this race. Among those rumored to be interested in running, we've heard for some time Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin, Attorney General Leslie Rutledge, and also State Senate President Jim Hendren. If any of these 3 might run, what would you think their strategy would need to be, and do they need to walk a fine line in the campaign?
So starting off with just one of them, since his name was mentioned in that CBS poll report that I talked about earlier, of course, Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin. I did reach out to him today about it because the article had said that he has been angrily calling contacts in Washington and Arkansas, kind of fuming over the fact that Sanders' name has even been contemplated, you know, with a GOP gubernatorial primary. He told me today what he wanted to share was that he's confident about any of his chances against anyone else besides Johnny Cash. So moving forward, he's definitely in good spirits. He, of course, hasn't said, just like the other 2 that you mentioned, Mallory, if it's going to be an official run or not. But I think what they need to tap into is that, hey, we're in Arkansas. We have been. We know what the people want. We have a very good pulse on the people already, whereas Sanders coming back in from being gone for so long, people could argue that she has to reconnect with the people and really kind of develop her message, where people like Griffin, Rutledge, and Hendren, they can kind of already talk about what they've been doing recently for Arkansas and its citizens specifically, kind of already have that message really going into the campaign. And so I think that's what they need to focus on, whereas, you know, Sanders obviously has a lot of name recognition and things of that nature, but as far as, you know, what she'll be able to do, since she's never actually held an elected office, she's done a lot behind the scenes for all of those those three people that I've mentioned before, that she can kind of throw their names out there. But it'll be really held to the test. Can she handle an elected position, which is very different from working behind the scenes in the role that she had.
And Governor Asa Hutchinson is term limited at this point. When he was asked this week about it, he said he's glad he doesn't have to run against her. Now let's go on the other side of the aisle. Democratic Party Chair Michael John Gray said, quote, "There are probably a number of Democrats who would love to step up and challenge Sarah Huckabee Sanders if she was going to be the nominee." What might we expect from the state Democratic Party if we get a Sanders campaign?
I think we're also going to have to expect someone who has a lot of name recognition already. This can't be a new face to Arkansas politics when it comes to who the Democrats push forward to run against Sanders or potentially anybody else. They have to be someone well known. I know Jared Henderson, who ran against Asa Hutchinson. Of course, Hutchinson was the incumbent. He was well known in different circles, but not across the state. As he was still a fairly new political name to be thrown around across the state. So I think Democrats really have to consider that this seat, since Asa Hutchinson terms out, that they could have a chance to take it back, and so they have to be able to throw out somebody too that people all across the state know and can look at their record as well.
Jesse, we of course miss you here in Arkansas. You're doing an amazing job in D.C. While you're here with us today, we want to talk about a very bittersweet day here at KARK. Our own Mark Mosley, executive producer and the producer of Capitol View, who actually created this show many years ago. He has been with our station for a very long time and has been with Capitol View, and I know is very near and dear to your heart. And today is his last day. He's headed to Dallas. He has a very big job there, and we're happy for him, but very sad as well.
Oh, most definitely. Mark, the only thing I have to say is I had the time of my life on the show with you, and then also getting to do one of our favorite things was Celebrity Christmas Karaoke, where we sang Time of My Life as Hillary Clinton and President Trump. And we even had Asa Hutchinson. We took a picture with him as well, but that was a good time.
Mark has done an amazing job, made a big impact on Arkansas politics. We'll miss you. Mark, I don't know if we can get a shot of him hard at work in the control room. He's very humble. Again, Jesse, thank you so much. And again, a big thank you to Mark Mosley, who created this show, Capitol View. It won't be the same without you. Coming up after a quick break, we will get into the looming threat of war between the U.S. and Iran. Former NATO Supreme Allied Commander and presidential candidate Wesley Clark joins us here in the studio. You are watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
New ice cream cookie sandwiches from Sonic. Delicious cookies and real ice cream are on a summer reunion tour. They taste so good live. Hurry in for Sonic Nights. New $1.49 ice cream cookie sandwiches and half-price shakes after 8.
Have you ever wanted a brand new camper? Hi, I'm Missy Gibson for John Gibson Auto Sales, and we are an official Gulfstream camper dealer. Whether you have good credit, bad credit, or no credit, we will finance your brand new Gulfstream camper. We also have a large selection of used campers, cars, trucks, SUVs, motorcycles, ATVs, performance trailers, and boats. Check us out online at johngibsonautosales.com, and we will have your purchase ready when you get here.
Instead of going to school every morning, what if school could come to you? Because learning happens anywhere and everywhere. K-12 powered schools provide a tuition-free, full-time, online public school education.
It's public school at home.
Visit K12.com to learn more.
My students are ready to accept the challenge, and they get all the attention that they deserve.
Students benefit from personalized support from state licensed teachers.
That to me is like a huge support for me. Honestly, she's just happier.
I can have more time with my family and do gymnastics.
K-12's curriculum is designed to engage students, to challenge them, and it's tuition free.
It's been a huge change in her life and ours.
So visit K12.com today and join the over 1 million K-12 students who have chosen public school at home. Tuition free in Arkansas.
Man, these Red Bull slushes are invigorating, right?
I know it, man. I'm feeling confident, feeling pumped. I want to jump this thing.
I don't know if that's such a good idea, TJ.
No, man, I need help. Can we jump this thing?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Rush in for Sonic's new Red Bull slushes, half price during happy hour.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Welcome back to Capitol View on this Sunday morning. Tensions between the United States and Iran seem to be getting worse by the day. And while the Trump administration says it doesn't want war, both sides seem to be preparing for it. Joining us this morning is General Wesley Clark, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, 2004 presidential candidate, and Arkansas native. Good morning, General Clark. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
We do want to disclose, we are taping this on a Friday, so things could change. If anything changes by Sunday, circumstances may have changed, but as of right now, it is a fast developing situation. President Trump confirming on Friday morning that they were prepared. They had everything ready for that attack against Iran, but he pulled back at the last minute because of the potential death toll. What are your thoughts on this situation? Of course, this was all for a drone being shot down, an unmanned drone. Would this have been appropriate?
Well, let's talk about it in several different angles, okay? One angle is when somebody attacks the United States and hits an asset, yeah, I mean, you'd like to go back and say, don't ever do that again and pop them, right? But in this case, that would have been the wrong response because the United States has put Iran in an enormous vice, squeezing them economically. They don't have any way out of it. The government's really suffering, and the only way they can raise their bargaining leverage against us is by pinprick attacks. So this was the fifth. They've hit tankers, they've shot mortars and rockets. They've been careful not to kill anybody, and they shot down an unmanned drone. And so if the United States would have responded with a big strike against several targets and killed a bunch of people, and okay, but we already know we're more powerful than they are. It's not like it's a question. So what would have happened is all the pressure in the world would have come against the United States. We'd be destroying commerce in the Gulf. We'd be escalating toward warfare, and everybody would have pointed the finger at us. That was the Iranian intent. So I think we dodged the bullet, whether it was by design, whether it was by luck, whether it was by Tucker Carlson on Fox News saying your electorate doesn't like expanding. I don't know really what the president's thinking was, and we may never know, but we dodged a bullet on that one. Now, the real problem is, where do we go from here? Because actually, we, the United States, started the problem. We had a perfectly good agreement to hold the line on Iranian nuclear activities. It did not constrain the other activities that Iran does that we don't like, and maybe the agreement could have been better done. But that piece worked. We destroyed that agreement. We pulled out of it, and we also sort of destroyed our credibility in the process, so it makes it hard for the Iranians to come back and talk to us. But we don't actually we haven't articulated exactly what we want out of this, other than we want to change Iran. We don't want them to have terrorists. We don't want them to support people in Yemen. We don't want them to support Hezbollah. We don't want them to try to, we don't want Iran to be Iran. And we're going to squeeze them until they collapse. If they were to collapse, we'd have another failed state, just like we have in Iraq. So tactically, we dodged a bullet last night, Thursday night, when the president decided not to pull the trigger. But strategically, everything's up in the air. We don't know where this is going, and there is still a risk we could go to war.
What can the U.S. do, if anything, to de-escalate the situation with Iran?
Well, we should be talking to Iran. Now, they're playing hard to get because that's in their interest. But, you know, the United States has now said we'll talk with no preconditions, but we've listed all the things we want. So they have to put enough leverage against us so that when they finally do come to the table with us, that we back off some of these demands. And that's what the jousting is really all about behind the scenes. So President Trump asked Japanese leader Abe to go to Tehran and say, oh, you should talk to Mr. Trump, you'd like him. And the Iranians said, not a chance. So the French have sent a high-level diplomat in there. We're going to have to keep the economic squeeze on. We're going to have to continue to seek to talk. But when we talk, we're going to have to recognize that the maximum demands that Secretary of State Pompeo laid out several months ago, we're not going to get those.
Let's talk politics in general for a second. What you're involved in right now, really working on a civility project, which is needed on every side in politics at this point. We saw in 2016 it got dirty, and we've always seen this in elections where people jab back and forth. But people now, 2016 election, there's no telling by next year with the 2020 election what we're going to see. How do we get back to where people can just be civil to each other and have meaningful conversations rather than just jabbing back and forth? Can the pendulum swing back at some point?
It could, but I think it depends on the people who are casting the votes. So as you know, every election cycle, 4% of the electorate changes. Old people pass on, young people are eligible to vote, but they bring the attitudes with them when they come into the voting range. And so the question is, can they understand that there was a time in America when people worked together and respected each other? They may not have agreed, but they found ways to submerge their disagreements in pursuit of what was best for the United States. So what we're doing is we've got a not-for-profit foundation, and I've teamed up with several Republicans, former Republicans, just like I'm a former candidate for president. And we're going to go out and around the country in colleges in red states and blue states and battleground states and non-battleground states to World Affairs Councils and others. We're going to talk about the things that Americans have in common across party lines. Because I think we have to persuade the electorate that there's not that big a difference. Most Americans want mostly the same thing. There's just a few wedge issues, and that's what partisans on both sides use to raise money to support candidates, and it's through the social media and 24-hour news cycles, it's driving the country apart.
A movement that is very, very much needed in this country and really around the world. Thank you for what you're doing with that. I know it will make a big difference, and thank you for joining us today for Capitol View. You're a very busy man, so we sure appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
When we come back, changes are coming to Little Rock as the city moves to close 2 golf courses. We talk about the vision to repurpose them and what it could mean for the capital city. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
Ashley HomeStore is Arkansas's largest selection of area rugs. Buy yours today. Over 500 in stock. Shop America's top brands like Stand. Save up to 50% plus get a free rug pad. That's Ashley HomeStore, exit 123 off I-30 in Bryant.
Tune in every Thursday morning for the Today Show Minute. Greg Curtis from the Good Earth Garden Center will share timely tips to keep your lawn and garden looking beautiful all year long. That's the Today Show Minute every Thursday morning on KARK 4.
Dale's little girl's heading to college. Luckily, her dorm is about 10 minutes from a hotel by Wyndham. Ashley's meeting all her in-laws, and she's about 10 minutes from a hotel by Wyndham. Jeff's flying to, oh, never mind. But hey, 10 minutes from a Wyndham. He's having the best day ever. And he's about 10 minutes from a hotel by Wyndham. With over 6,000 hotels across the country, a great hotel by Wyndham is closer than you think. Book direct at wyndhamhotels.com.
The Arkansas Scholarship Lottery isn't just making winners today, we're making them for life. With more than 500,000 life-changing scholarships now awarded, we're helping today's students become tomorrow's leaders. Like Jaleese, enrolled in the STEM program at UA Fort Smith, Ruthie, who's attending Ouachita Baptist, and Miriam, who graduated from Arkansas Tech.
If it weren't for the Arkansas Lottery Scholarship, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Apply now at scholarships.adhe.edu.
This is winning.
Feel the summer vibes with Arkansas Blood Institute. Give blood this month and get a t-shirt plus 1 entry to Magic Springs Theme and Water Park. Summer vibes and saving lives with Arkansas Blood Institute. Visit arkbi.org for more info.
It's hot and you need a pool. Super summer sale at Family Leisure.
Pools from $12.99. Patio furniture. We've got it all, and it's all on sale. Ask about the $49.99 spa special. Play sets, grills, and more. Summer sale going on now at Family Leisure.
Get more. Buy the footlong of the day and get 2 sides free. Choose from chips, 2 cookies, or a 20-ounce drink free with the footlong of the day. Make it what you want.
Ashley HomeStore is Arkansas's largest selection of area rugs. Buy yours today. Over 500 in stock. Shop America's top brands like Oriental Weavers. Save up to 50% plus get a free rug pad. That's Ashley HomeStore, exit 123 off I-30 in Bryant.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
I'm very disappointed that the city's taking the action that they are. You know, 46 years is a long time to play at a facility. And just to see it go away, I just don't understand it, to tell you the truth.
Welcome back to Capitol View on this Sunday morning. This week, the city of Little Rock made official its plans to close 2 public golf courses as part of an ongoing push to trim the budget. The decision could have wide-ranging effects beyond golfing. Joining us today to discuss that and more, Skip Rutherford, Dean of the Clinton School of Public Service. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Glad to be here.
News certainly everybody has been talking about in Arkansas with the closure of War Memorial and Hyndman golf courses. We want to start with War Memorial. That will close after July 4th of this year, so just a few weeks away. Several ideas have been thrown out about how to repurpose this. No official plan. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, number one, I think it's the correct decision, notwithstanding the fact that people have an allegiance to playing golf at War Memorial, and I respect that, and that's a time-honored tradition that should be acknowledged. But at the same point, there have been people for years thinking that we should repurpose this wonderful space in the heartland of our city. So I think it's a good thing. I think it gives Little Rock an opportunity to think through what it wants to do next. I don't think it hurts not to have a plan. I think the neat thing about it is you have the land. And the land is valuable. In the middle of the city, it's a wonderful access. If you look at the people that use the Jim Daly Fitness Center, if you look at the people that use the Little Rock Zoo, you have a very multicultural group. So I think the possibilities are really exciting.
And those are some of the ideas that have been thrown around, like you said, public parks, something that would incorporate the Little Rock Zoo possibly, and also keeping that tailgating space for Razorback games. I know we're down to 1 now, or eventually more in the future. We're promised more. But that Razorback space, even though it's 1 day a year, is kind of special.
Well, I think the mayor made it clear that that space is going to stay for football game tailgating, and I think you've got things like the Salt Bowl and other things that attract a lot of people. So I think the possibilities are numerous. But the neat thing about it is we don't have to rush into a decision. The neat thing about it is that I believe the mayor said he was going to appoint a task force of people to look at the possibilities. And you look at it, I mean, look at Verizon Arena. Look at the expansion of the Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau. Look at the new Art Center. Look at the expansion and the renovation of Robinson Auditorium. All these things came through after study and planning. So Little Rock should view this as an exciting opportunity, as a new adventure, and hopefully that's the way it will be received.
I want to throw out another idea that was put out on Twitter this week, one of many. This from State Senator Will Bond, who talked about incorporating UA Little Rock. We're seeing big things from UA Little Rock right now. He says, in remaking the War Memorial area, let's keep in mind connecting Midtown with UA Little Rock, having a real walkable, bikeable connection between UALR and Midtown. Fair Park would be awesome. Little Rock needs a vibrant UALR. Could this be a possibility we could see?
Well, I think it's a possibility. And again, you've got, you know, innovative thinkers like Will Bond thinking big. And that's what we should encourage people to do. I think all possibilities should be on the table. Again, I think that, you know, what you have at War Memorial right now is the possibility of, you know, looking first at the zoo. Is that a possibility? Looking at, I tell you what I hope it is not. I hope there's not a Topgolf there.
You don't want a Topgolf.
I want a Topgolf, but not at War Memorial.
But not there.
Yeah, Topgolf can be fine. I mean, I'm not against Topgolf, but that's not what we need. War Memorial needs to be community spaces. It needs to be parks and walking and maybe sports fields and things like that. Again, that's the mayor and his committee.
That's a good point. That's a very good point, because a lot of people have said, okay, that's out of the way, let's put the Topgolf there. But you're right. We'll move that to another area.
I think Topgolf may be fine, but not at War Memorial. That's not what we need in Midtown.
That's a good point. I want to move on to another topic. This has been a very hot topic, not only here in the state of Arkansas, but really around the country. Many saw this week as Sarah Huckabee Sanders is leaving, President Trump tweeting a possible hint to a gubernatorial run here in Arkansas. That was not the only thing. At his rally this week, he said again, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is leaving, and could she be running for governor of Arkansas, saying it twice. Do you see this happening? If it does happen, do you expect her to win?
Well, number one, I think saying it the first time, you could say he was excited and they had talked about it. But I think saying it the second time means that she didn't shut the conversation down. So, look, when President Trump tweeted that you ought to go out and buy Tom Cotton's book, Tom Cotton's book went on the New York Times bestseller list, and has been on that 3 weeks in a row. So the Trump impact is significant. Now, he has his strong supporters and he has his strong detractors. But the fact that he has so strongly endorsed Sarah Huckabee Sanders for governor, I think is very significant. Second thing you got to look at in this governor's race in Arkansas is that the name is Sarah Huckabee Sanders. It's not as if she's a stranger. It is as if that, you know, her dad was a very popular governor of Arkansas. So if she runs, I don't know whether I've not talked to her, she's a talented, bright person. And do I think the endorsement of Trump will help her in Arkansas? You bet.
Skip Rutherford, we love having you on. Thank you for joining us for Capitol View. We are back to wrap up Capitol View right after this. Stick around.
Hey y'all, it's with a grateful heart that we want to welcome you to Down South. It's been a dream of my mother and I to create a space where you can come as you are and feel at home, but leave inspired, confident, and empowered to go home and try something new. Take time out of your day and come and visit us. You'll find unique Southern-inspired furnishings and gifts with a farmhouse, Southwestern, rustic chic kind of vibe. We can't wait to see y'all down south in El Paso.
I'm so excited and so nervous to be back. It's like my family.
This is the best run of her life.
American Ninja Warrior, Monday on NBC. Tuesday, Songland welcomes Meghan Trainor. In an episode that has everyone.
They are all winners.
Raising their game.
Make me fall. Oh, you want to battle me?
Songland, Tuesday on NBC.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And that is it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget, you can always take Capitol View on the go. Download the Capitol View podcast wherever you get your podcast. We are back with an all-new Capitol View next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.